Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Awkwardness. My name is Chris. This is my beautiful wife and co-host.
Lily!
Yes. So just to jump right into it, in the interest of saving time, today on the show we have Lolo McGrath of Primetime Pro Wrestling. So they are the co-founder and in charge of branding and culture for PTPW, sorry. So we'll get into a little bit of obviously what that means, and I just want to get them into the chat now. It's loading up.
Oh, okay, I was like, what's going on?
They're actually joined from two different accounts. I'm not sure, but so I'm just waiting for one of them to, I guess, to go through.
Okay.
Let's try this one.
Maybe I should send them a text message now. Did it load up? Oh.
Whoa, hey, I can see you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we see your picture.
You're frozen right now.
Yeah, I just have a picture because I'm walking around outside, so.
Oh yeah, no worries. You know what? Actually, I remember you saying that too, that you weren't gonna want to be on.
Yeah,
on
because
screen.
my partner's actually running one of his role-playing campaigns inside the apartment right now.
Awesome.
So you took a walk.
So, yeah, I figured you wouldn't want to hear, all of the misadventures that he and his buddies are going on, like way back in the background. So I figured I would take myself outside because we don't get a lot of nice days. We haven't had a ton of nice days in Chicago yet, but here we are.
Oh, you're in Chicago?
I am, yeah. I'm not based in DC, actually.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
I think I already knew that.
I don't talk about being in Chicago too much, because doing wrestling stuff in DC, my entire social life is still based in DC. So the joke I make, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm part of like a role-playing game in DC, like where I pretend to be a citizen of the district, but I live somewhere else. It's like, it's a really long campaign. It's been going on for a long time,
So,
do you travel when you go like to any wrestling shows? You travel from Chicago to DC every time?
Every time. And
Wow, awesome.
there have been, we've run 5 shows now, and there have been 3 close calls where I almost didn't make it because of flight cancellations and this, that, and the other. So it's never easy.
Oh my gosh.
that must kind of contribute to I don't know, like going from where you're from to a place that like and then meeting so many different people and then going back and having all those people not have you around all the time. Does it make you feel like you're closer to them when you're there?
It's great. It feels like a big family reunion every time because a lot of the people who come to our shows are not just, we have a lot of folks who are not wrestling fans. I mean, now they are, of
I was
course.
just telling her that, yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty magical to see because I spent a number of years bartending in DC. So to see all these people who for years would come in and sit at my bar and, have supported me. Essentially, if I used to joke like, oh, it's my regulars, they pay my health insurance because they literally do, like still come back and invest in a personal project of mine. It's really beautiful. It's really humbling.
Yeah, it is. It's very beautiful.
So at what point, I know you're not a long-time wrestling fan, right?
No, not at all. I think I'll be going on year 3 this.
Oh wow.
This summer. And by year 3, I mean like the very first wrestling match I ever watched ever. I didn't grow up watching it at all.
So what got you into it?
An ex-boyfriend.
Well, that's how something
started. Okay.
No, the joke I make is, you know, I took his hobby and the thing that he loved, and I just adopted it for myself and did it 10 times better than he ever did. So,
Oh.
no, and it's actually a very mean-spirited joke because he's a lovely person, and I'm very grateful for what he comes to my shows. I can't be that mean.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, like a really wonderful person who did a really great job of, because, you know, it was WWE, who does not have a track record of having policies and ethics that I personally agree with.
Yeah,
So
understandably so.
oh my, exactly. So to have somebody introduce me to it who could really give me like the bigger picture as to why people love this thing and keep coming back to it, was really, really helpful. And yeah, I wouldn't have been a wrestling fan otherwise. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's like you said, for you to take something and then run with it in your own path.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
And then not only that, but it's like you've taken it and you've made it grow into something so beautiful as to like bring all these people in that would have never, just like he brought you into wrestling, you brought them into wrestling, and it's probably people that would have never thought about wrestling twice, and then you showed them this beautiful new world.
It's nice. And you know, I say it's a bit of a trade-off because he, prior to us dating, he was really interested in cocktails and cocktailing and booze and alcohol and all the fun chemical stuff that goes on behind that. And now he's an excellent cocktailing bartender in DC. So we just like traded interests and now are like dominating each other's fields. It was really, that was perfect. That's as good as an ending as you get in a relationship, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it, right? Wow, cool.
So, talk a little bit about primetime and sort of what, I don't know, I guess like a mission statement or kind of like a code that you guys live by.
Yeah, we like to, me and Nicholas Capeza, Coach, or Mr. I always say Coach Gator because that's how I met him, but Mr. Gator, who's the owner and the president of the company. He's a very, very, very long time wrestling fan, grew up watching it, a very good wrestling historian. And, you know, me coming into the business, when we founded Primetime Pro, I hadn't even been watching wrestling for 2 years. So what we've always said is that it has an old school look, like the colors, the booking, the kind of storytelling we want to do, really is paying tribute to a lot of the wrestling that people grew up watching, but with very very new school ethics. So, and you know, I think that definitely speaks for itself. As in, you know, not having, you know, now that I've been able to revisit wrestling of the past and read what a lot of those athletes went through and how, you know, it's dirty and gross now, but even comparatively, it was even dirtier and grosser back then. I'm
not even really into, I'm the half that's like not really that big into wrestling, but like seeing WWE like 20 years ago with the women's boobies all out and all blonde, bleach blonde, and like wrestling half naked in the ring is like, what the hell? And then it was like not so much for talent, but just for show. And it's terrible and it's not cool. And then just now it's like so different. You see all these beautiful, like you see amazing talent that come from the women, and they really are representing us in such a beautiful way. But yeah,
it's really different. And you know, not having the full context of having been a child and growing up watching it, I have an appreciation too for the way that a lot of folks now are going back and talking about that diva era and, you know, what it looked like to us and what was going on behind the scenes, and just giving a much fuller picture of what the experience was for people then.
Right. Who's your favorite wrestler? Do you have one?
I have a few, and of course they all wrestle for me. So,
I mean, it's better that way than to have like these big names that everybody knows of. Than yeah.
Like easily. Effie is definitely one of them.
Such a lovely person.
He's our 51st state champion in DC, but in terms of all times, it's O'Shea Edwards and Trish Adora without a doubt. You know, I started going to all the indie shows that I went to before Primetime. Those were two talents I had never seen at an indie show before, and I was completely unfamiliar with their work. And, you know, so of course they're kind of my favorites because I've watched them explode over the past year, and I feel really good about the part that I was able to play in it. But no,
And like,
they are incredible, incredible, incredible storytellers, and so unique and different in terms of the aesthetic they choose, in terms of the long-term storytelling, in terms of really, in Trisha's case, bringing intergender wrestling to the district in such a powerful way.
right.
She is the title holder she's the Pan-African World Diaspora Champion, which is a title that is run by Fight Club, who is based in DC, who push a lot of wrestlers of color, Black wrestlers, to the forefront.
I actually went out of my way to watch that that show where she was crowned champion. And
Great, like amazing stuff, right?
it really was. Yeah, it really was.
So yeah, but between the two promotions that run in DC, it's really, really cool that you know, it's not just like, oh, these are cool ethical companies who have nice values. Like, we're very in your face and unapologetic about the politics that we follow, because you know, you can't dodge politics anymore. You really have to have your you have to have ideas. You can't check out, you know. So it's really it's special, and it's not something that exists everywhere, so I'm really proud of it.
No, I'm actually very much influenced by you guys, or you know, like I appreciate so much that you take that stance. And I know, like, personally, for a long time, I was the type of person that always wanted to sort of choose not to have a stance and just say, like, I love wrestling and I'm watching wrestling because I love it, and kind of like turn the other cheek to some of the negative things that were happening. But lately, I find myself like more and more just being like, I have to put my foot down on certain things, and like, actually, if I believe in stuff, I have to kind of act out what I'm claiming to believe, you know?
Absolutely, and that's that kind of decision making that you're doing in terms of speaking out like that runs pretty counter to what the biggest dogs in this industry want you to do. So
Right.
yeah, it's good rebellion for sure.
Have you found yourself having any negative experiences in the time that you've been, you know, a wrestling fan, or with Primetime?
Not with primetime specifically, but yeah, I think that there are really obvious problems in the wrestling industry, especially when we look at things like, you know, sexual assault, sexual misconduct in our scene, and that's something that is not. I think it's very easy for us, especially for those of us who are very active on Twitter, to assume that we're the only form of entertainment that is experiencing that kind of thing, and
that happens all the time and everywhere.
true.
It's not even entertainment, it's just like
It's
everywhere.
It really
Everywhere,
is,
yeah.
and that doesn't make it any better. But
No, of course not.
I think people really do need to like pan the camera out a little bit and realize that there are other industries who are doing a better job of handling this, and it's okay it's okay to ask for help and take inspiration from scenes other than your own, you know.
And like it's very important to reach out to other people that have gone through it, so that you don't feel so alone either, you know, because it sucks to go through a situation like that and feel like you're the only one. But if you know that there's others, you kind of like band together, you know, and like reach out to other people, and you can kind of just rise up. And
Exactly. I think that the thing that I struggle the most with when it comes to that particular issue in our industry is I really, really, really wish that people would think before they tweet. And by that, I mean, yes, stand up for survivors, speak out, say the things that you need to. But even if you are voicing support for somebody, remember that survivors are also on Twitter and they're also reading what you have to say. Not every victim, every survivor of sexual misconduct necessarily wants to see people like posting aggressively about how like, oh, this person did this thing to this other person, they need to go to jail and they need to go to prison. Not everybody feels that way. Like there are a lot of folks who are just like, yeah, I really wish people wouldn't talk about this at all. Like, I wish it never happened to me. And it's really hard to see my personal story like popping up nonstop on a Twitter timeline. You know, we all have good intentions, and everybody wants to make sure that it's known that I want people to know as an individual what I stand for, but
Yeah.
again,
But
remember
don't
that
sound
people are
anybody
reading.
else's stories, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really easy to center, and especially for people who have been through it themselves, I think it's really easy for them to center their own trauma in these kinds of situations and be like, oh, I went through something similar, therefore I know exactly how that survivor feels. Not
No, of course,
necessarily.
everyone's completely different.
Yeah. So
I guess in a sense, it's kind of like, I don't know. For some reason, this popped into my head, but like the process that people go through when it comes to coming out, like that's a very personal thing, and it's not for anybody else to say, like, oh, just do it, or to out that person, because it, like, of course that person should feel like, they're able to celebrate who they are, but at the same time, it's how they want to do it, and it's a totally personal process.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
People have control over. Yeah, and that is an excellent parallel to draw. But yeah, and it's also like recognizing that there is a difference between someone who has caused harm and someone who has caused harm who is a legitimate predator who's going to continue causing harm. So when it comes to things like cancel culture, I'm less interested in taking down individuals and much more interested in how we develop practices as a community where we can prevent these issues from happening in the first place, and also with the recognition that, like, if somebody causes harm in one community and they are immediately ousted, what we see a lot in, like, I think people who are really into like their local music scene can probably speak to this a lot better. If I live in, and I've seen this happen before, if I live in Washington, D.C., and one person, while high, while drunk, while inebriated, does something to another person, and our first response is to be like, okay, well, they cannot come to the show anymore. Their band cannot play in this space anymore. And all of their friends must stop talking to them immediately. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to pick up their car and they're going to move to Philadelphia and just continue the same cycles. And now they've got a chip on their shoulder, right? Because they're like, well, fuck all these people, and this is, I don't want to be intentionally misread in saying that, like, we need to support, like, those who commit sexual assault. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying we have to be a lot more careful about our whole community response to these kinds of things, because I don't want to take my trash and dump it in somebody else's backyard.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
But
this is like really deep.
I know these are some like these are like, this could be its own thing entirely. But for anybody who ever just like wants to have a larger conversation about it, I've taken a lot more interest lately in how community accountability can affect these kinds of issues, and I'd love to talk about it further. So we should talk about it. If we ignore the problem, it just gets worse, as we
I actually just
see time and time again.
Yep, yeah. I saw a couple tweets this morning. I might have liked it from this account, and basically what it was like, don't be so quick to jump on individuals or to tell individuals, like, how to correct their behavior, but like look at the bigger picture and look at the system that's enabling those individuals to kind of like to exist.
Exactly. Tearing down individuals doesn't do shit. Like, they're gonna keep popping up like daisies, right? It's creating whole systems and just, I don't have any good answers in terms of exactly how we do this, but we need to at least come up with some better ideas than what we have so far. Because all we have so far is a 24-hour news cycle where one person harms another person. We talk about it nonstop on Twitter. Everybody gets really mad. And then like 2 days later, we've all completely forgotten about it. And we're not talking about why it happened in the first place.
Right.
Lather, rinse, repeat again and again and again. And all we are doing is collectively re-traumatizing individuals who don't deserve it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like just thinking about my own experience, because I've been through sexual abuse but I was very young, and it was like horribly to speak of from a family member, which is like not even like
that's a whole
yeah, it's a whole another story and So then it's like, yeah, okay, so I know these people are getting sexually assaulted from like their entertainment and where they're working, but then it's like also there's so many people that have to go through it through family members, which is horrible. And then I haven't even really spoken about one of them just because of the fact that I'm so afraid of what might happen, which sounds kind of stupid, but it's just like, I don't know, it all stems from a place that I guess I don't really even like to speak of. Like you said, I don't like to speak about it just because I don't want to really even face it, pretty much.
You don't want to, and nobody,
Oh, yeah.
and you don't, I think that one of the big long-term issues that we've seen with things like the Me Too movement is now that it's become almost an expectation that every single one of us who's ever been through something needs to describe in great detail what we went through to the larger public in order to like legitimize our own experiences and add to the greater cultural narrative. And I think like requiring like a trauma ID card.
Yeah, no, that's
by
fucked
this
up.
point.
It should be completely enough just to be like, I've gone through it and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we have solved all of the world's problems within 20 minutes.
Yeah,
We're
right.
good to go. There are no more problems anymore, and we can just
really
chill now.
I really wish that was completely possible, but unfortunately, this world is so fucked up. But anyway,
Yep.
we wanted to ask you, when was the first time you experienced anxiety, or just like what age and all that stuff?
So that's the thing, you can go through so much therapy and go back and look at your entire life's experience and try to figure out the exact moment where it all went wrong. And I think when we talk about, I talk about anxiety and depression as sort of like the more acceptable forms of mental illness. We've kind of, I think, culturally come to a point, if you are a person with a few brain cells to rub together, you figured out by now that most people struggle with some degree of depression or some degree of anxiety, and that waxes and wanes a lot. But there are so many other kinds of outer factors and outside factors and other kinds of mental illness that are going to cause the same kinds of problems. And so, like when I think about growing up and being a child, I don't think of myself as an anxious child. I wasn't shy. I would run right up to people and I would talk to them immediately. But through doing the work of therapy over a number of years, you start to realize like, well, why was I a child who was so obsessed with what adults thought of me? And who was so fixated on pleasing the people around me and pleasing adults. That's kind of a form of anxiety too,
Of course, yeah.
Not kind of, it's absolutely a form of anxiety. And so, yeah, I think it's something that's just been an intrinsic part of me that I have dealt with and hidden in a lot of different kinds of ways. So that same kind of people pleasing that I had as a child, I became an adult and I became extremely conscientious of the fact that I suffered from panic attacks. I suffered from anxiety. Lots of things made me very afraid all the time, and it made it really difficult to communicate with people. When I started bartending, when you're bartending and it's really busy and you have
no choice.
You've got 500 people in your nightclub. Exactly. There is no time to stop and think to yourself, am I anxious right now? Am I experiencing anxiety right now? Because you can just channel it into something different. But
I think that I don't know, this is just from personal experience. I think when you're around, or like being around a big group of people like that, and being consistently and constantly busy, it kind of takes your mind off of the anxiety altogether.
Exactly. But the price you pay, especially in bartender world, is like, something's got to give at one point. You can only work those long shifts and be on your feet and destroy your body for so long before you really do start to feel the effects of that.
Right. And I know that also, I know emotionally it can also drain you.
Well, yeah, it is. It's draining, and that contributes to anxiety in other forms. So, like, if I was working 4 nights a week, by Friday night, I'd be like, okay, this is my night off. I should go spend time with my friends and do something for me. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to make eye contact with anybody. I don't want anybody to look at me. I don't want anybody to see me. And at the time, I thought that was kind of normal, and it is normal in a way to need that decompression time. But no, with bartending and being in the club scene, I really did run myself into the ground in a pretty dangerous way.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, anytime you go to a busy bar, just like assume that the bartender is in physical pain. Just assume.
Oh my
I mean, also like talking about that anxiety that you would feel like, but you had to kind of suppress and just like push your way through it. It's still happening, so it's still going to take like the physical toll that anxiety takes, you know, because
Yeah,
there's
it's
a
still there.
biological thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's there. You're just ignoring it. And in my, and like, you really do have to think about like the longer term damage, because I will say, coming out on the other side of having been like, and I say this kind of as a joke, but also not, like living my life as a little nightclub DC socialite for a while, like I don't do anything anymore. you know
Oh
I'm
my
like,
god.
I'm just like, leave me alone. So wrestling really is one of the only times in which I willingly and enthusiastically put myself in the public eye, and I choose to be around a lot of people at one time. And I enjoy it while it happens, but everything in moderation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you are doing your wrestling thing, and I mean, you're a promoter, right? So when you're doing your promoting, and like, I mean, I know the other day you were watching one of your shows on TV. Well, it wasn't on TV. It was one of these indie channels
Yeah,
online.
I put on Butch versus Gore on IWTV.
And I saw that you were in the ring. Do you ever feel like anxious before you are gonna like announce something in the ring, or yeah?
Oh God. Well, here, I'll dial it back or not, we'll circle back to something else. So, I run the company with Mr. Gator. He's the promoter. He does like the hard, nasty, he does the boring shit, right? Like he does the fun stuff.
I know from messaging experience. Yeah, like
Oh my God.
he
Like
takes care of the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I mean, he's an incredible matchmaker, but that's what you want to do as a promoter, with like around time. Like I work hard and I do a lot, but doing branding and culture, I get to do more of the fun stuff too. So I'm very lucky in that way, that a lot of like the nitty gritty that I don't know that I would be capable of doing, that would really make me anxious, is taken off. But yeah, before I go out, it is really hard. Now for Butch versus Gore, I was ring announcing, and so once I get going, I'm fine. It takes a little while, but
it's the beginning.
I'm fine. But for most shows, I'm not ring announcing, because it's my company, so I don't necessarily always want to be in the spotlight in that way.
That's how it is for everyone, I think.
It is. I think it's a much better look. But I always go out and I address the crowd. I thank the sponsors. I talk about upcoming events. I had a storyline with Mark Allen Haggerty that I had going for a while. That was like really tiny but really cute and fun, and just added some comic relief to shows. And so yeah, no, I'm scared shitless before I go out. Like I was a theater kid growing up, and I had a theater teacher who said something that I've really held on to, and I don't know if it's bullshit or not, but it's helped me. And she said, if you're not nervous, you don't care enough.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. It's true.
And there are some people who don't get nervous at all, and I am not saying that they don't care. I get it, but God, if your knees are knocking together before you go address a bunch of people who may or may not know who you are, and this is like your one shot to make that impression, it's totally normal to be nervous. And it's not helpful running at a brewery too, where I'm like, oh my God, I need a beer.
Cool.
Yeah, we run at DC Brow, which is like the DC brewery, which is really fun.
Yeah.
It's magical. Oh, it's like, and I cannot speak more highly about the staff. Like, they open up the entire building to all the wrestlers. Like, if you are a wrestler and you need a private space to just kind of do your thing by yourself for a while, there are nooks and crannies everywhere. I mean, the owner always comes into the locker room with a bottle of Jameson, like, whoever wants it, go for it. Oh, the hospitality is really, really something, and definitely not something that you get in every venue.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's a big difference between just having a venue and having a home. So that feels like a home type scenario.
It's home. And it's because when I was bartending, I became friends with the owners, and that it's those community connections in DC that I think also helps add to how special our scene is. We're like, part of the reason why our company exists is because of the DC bar scene, and I love that because that's my home.
Were you raised over there?
I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. So 2.5 hours driving on a good day, or an okay day, that good old I-95 traffic. But I grew up going to DC a lot, but no, I'm not a DC native. I just, the city adopted me, that's for sure.
Okay,
I did not adopt the city.
Okay, so another topic that we want to talk about is that you're non-binary, right?
Yeah, yes.
Can you explain to us what that is a little bit more? And all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
Take us to school.
Gosh, yes, exactly. And it's so funny because I do nanny now, so like the 3-year-old is just like, yeah, what's gender? I don't know. So it's like if a 3-year-old can understand it, then really anybody can. But so there's so much to get into with that. But the most basic way to explain it to people, to be non-binary is and I can't speak for everybody, but for the most part, it's a term that falls underneath the transgender umbrella. In terms of you have a gender that is neither being a cisgender man or a cisgender woman. And for people that can mean a lot of different things. There are people who are agender, who say that I have no gender at all, and not say I have no gender at all. It's funny like how much you internalize the wrong way of talking about things, even when you're part of the community. So I have to check myself too sometimes. But you can be agender and have no identity. You can, if you think of gender as a spectrum, you can swing in so many different directions like that. I think of myself and present as definitely masculine of center. I do not think of myself as someone who does not have any kind of gender at all. I have my own. I figured it out myself, and I've built it myself, and it's kind of magical.
How long? Where did that start for you? Like, where was it sort of like where you started to question?
Oh man, my joke answer is summer camp, and it's kind of true. I was one of those kids who, I think it's a pretty classic story you hear from a lot of folks who are assigned female at birth, AFAB, and who later on realize that they are not a cisgender woman. I was a real tomboy growing up, or at least I really wanted to be. And I really had that discouraged a lot. Like I remember being in the 2nd grade, and for some reason, all the kids in my class, in my grade, we decided that we were going to have cliques, and we were going to name the cliques, and it was going to be this whole thing. And my mom put me in like flowers, pink, all this like stuff that I did not want to wear, that I have no problem with now. But at the time, I'm in the 2nd grade, and I'm like, no, I want to play football, and I want to be rough, and I want to be one of the boys. And so I remember one day she put me in overalls that were like baby pink, and they had these little blue flowers on it, and all the tomboy girls at school were like, oh, you're gonna have to hang out with the girly girls now. And it was so devastating. And I laugh at it because it's kind of it's funny, right? We can laugh at this stuff, but it was so sad too. Just
you're of course 2nd grade. That sucks. I mean, hello.
I wish I could scoop up that little baby sometimes and be like, you're fine. You are fine. And circling back to the comment about summer camp, it really was being sent away to camp every summer in a place where being beautiful and being feminine was not a message that I was having constantly thrown at me, because we didn't have TV, we didn't have Disney movies, we had let's build a fire and get dirty and plant a garden and tip over the canoe and go through with cabin number 5.
I think all of that stuff is way cooler than just sitting down and watching a Disney movie, but okay.
It was really, really wonderful, and it showed me a completely different way of living, in terms of this was somewhere that being the coolest person was defined by how, and it sounds corny, but it really was such a real thing. How kind are you to people? How inclusive are you? How creative are your games? How, like, you know, if it's like a theme day at camp, how far did you take it, you know? That was what it took to be considered a cool and interesting, a popular person in that context. And it was such an escape from the universe that I was growing up in. And that was being at camp was really the first place where I was like, oh, I am wearing clothing, I am taking part in activities, I am hanging out with so many children of so many different backgrounds and appearances and expressions that I don't feel so gendered. I don't feel like such a girl right now. I am whoever I want to be. And it was such a haven. I ended up working there all through high school and then all through college, and living there over the summers. And it was so life-changing for me. So there was no definitive moment because, you know, we didn't have the language at the time.
And it was always a part of you, right?
Yeah, I didn't have the words for it because nobody really did. You were a boy or a girl or a tomboy or gay, you know. That was
That's how it was back then. Then I feel, oh my God, like we're so old, but yeah.
Those were like the 4 gender expressions that you were allowed to have.
And honestly, I still feel like very confused. Not confused, but like, because there's so many different categories, I'm very fascinated about transgender. That's and then non-binary is kind of relatively new to me, and I know that there's so many other topics and things underneath that I'm just like, I still need to learn a lot more.
And what's really, and I think what people need to hear who are cisgender too, is that I will tell you that when I first saw they them pronouns, when I first saw the entire expression of this is what non-binary is and this is what it means, I thought it was bullshit. Like I was like, this seems like it's not a thing. I don't understand it, therefore it is fake.
That's the problem, though. Like, that's the big problem with people, is that because they don't understand it, they just assume that it's fake because they don't understand it.
Yeah, and what's funny is it was describing me to a T, but the messages that I had been indoctrinated with my whole entire life ran so counter to that it took a lot of work before I could really wrap my head around it. And even like, you know, just to sort of pull back the curtain a little bit within my larger community, you know, there's a lot of issues too in terms of like, you know, people will say, okay, well, this person says that they're non-binary, but they are really muscular and have a beard and just look like such a dude and they're such a guy. And it's like,
that doesn't
what does that
matter,
even, it really shouldn't. But it's, you have to train yourself. You really do. I had to train myself. I had to actively be like, okay, it is Sunday. I'm going for a walk right now. And every single person I come across, I'm going to make a statement in my head and I'm going to use gender neutral pronouns just to like get in the habit of it.
That's very difficult for me. Like, honestly, like before this interview, me and Chris would constantly have to like check ourselves and be like, they, them, and not call you she and her.
That's good.
Yeah,
you should be doing that.
And of course, and also because we totally want to respect you, you know, like that's, but like the last thing we wanted to do, like I said before, was make you feel uncomfortable. And if that's gonna make you feel uncomfortable, then that's totally like not our goal. So
yeah, of course.
So we were trying our hardest, and then I would be like, no, like if Chris would stay back, I'd be like, no, it's stay dumb, and then he would do it to me, and yeah.
It takes a lot of practice, and what I tell people too is to practice on animals. Like if you see somebody walking their dog outside, people are like, oh, a golden retriever, what a beautiful boy. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to swear.
No, that's totally fine. You know, like for me, I work with a transgender man. So like,
oh yeah,
that was, what's up, bud? That was my first experience with being around somebody. Yeah. So
this is not a foreign noise to me. I am so used to the voice of child in the background of my life. So
right now he's got banana and glitter everywhere. It's awesome.
Glitter.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, if we're gonna have a non-binary boy or whatever.
I was gonna say
no.
Bananas and glitter could be like a memoir.
No, it's not even that. But he loves wearing my heels. Also, he's always going after my heels, and I'm looking at him like, okay.
What's the other things? The nails.
My nails. He loves my ears. He loves makeup. So I mean, and whatever he wants, we'll always support him regardless.
He's growing up in a very different world than all of us were raised in, you know, and that's
and I mean
that's great. It makes things easier for all parties.
Yeah, and I mean, but believe it or not, I mean, it's really unfortunate and sad to see parents out there that are like, for example, the other day when he was playing around with my heel, there would have been fathers out there like, no, this is my son, you're a boy, you're not allowed to play with heels, and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, he's just a baby, and if that's what he likes to grow up, if that's what he grew up liking, then all the power to him. And
then that's totally fine.
And that's totally fine, and we are just always going to support whatever he wants, because it's like, it's what if we love him, we have to like empower him to do whatever he wants to do. If that he's not going to be happy, and that's the last thing that we want, is not for him not to be happy. Yeah,
that's real love. I think that a lot of I know that a lot of parents reject that kind of thing because it does come from a place of legitimate fear. You don't want to see your baby get hurt or made fun of, but
that's
man,
kind of
that's what happens. That's
exactly that's a part of life. That's a part of life, and at the end of the day, it'll only make them stronger, and it'll just put them in those situation where they meet. Well, they'll meet people that are like them, you know, and then I don't know. It's
exactly.
all gonna come from a place of empowerment, regardless if they get made fun of at a certain point. I just want him to understand that I'm always there for him. That if he ever wants to reach out to me and talk to me about it, of course I'm always here for you. And I just want to understand that when he reaches a certain point in his life, that it's not going to be like that anymore. That it's just always going to be about love, because he's going to meet other people that are like him.
And you know, we are making so much collective progress right now that by the time he is old enough to really start having conversations about this stuff, and I'll say I nanny a 3-year-old, and she is already very interested and attached to like figuring out what in the world gender is and whether or not it's oh my god, because you know, like once you have all your words, it does become very, well, pink is for girls and blue is for boys. And then you start going to preschool. I hate that also
so much. I don't like that. I think that's very wrong. I think if a kid wants to like whatever color they like, if a boy wants to play with Barbie dolls, and if a girl wants to play with trucks, and let them be. Like, who the hell cares? I just
and it should be very obvious, but you know, I can have so many conversations with her. Her parents are doing such amazing work to like let this child be whoever she wants to be. That's but beautiful. You know, you're still guiding a child through a world with voices that are sometimes much louder than those voices of the people who love you. So
yeah, that's true.
It's a lot. It's hard, but
yeah, I was thinking. I don't know if you ever heard of this person. It's a transgender girl now. I think she's like a teenager. I think she was like on Showtime or something, or TLC.
Is it Jazz?
Jazz, yeah. And
yeah.
She knew that she was transgender when she was only 3 years old. And then
I
was like, wow, that's like our baby's like 15 months old or 16 months old. That's literally like a year and a half away from 3. And seeing that little year can already know if like saying that's wow.
Who have a very clear knowledge about exactly who they are, and if you ask them, they will tell you. And you know that, and what makes things like that tricky too is, you know, I wonder often if I'd been born at a different time and this, that, and the other, if when I was a small child, if I knew that not being a boy and not being a girl was an option, if I would have attached to that verbally and with like full knowledge as to what that was, you know. But you know, I've got a good deal and a good life and good people now. So
I just thought of another question. Was your family like supportive of you when you?
So it's wow. So I don't speak to my father. And I'm and it's great actually. I celebrate every Father's Day that I do not have to deal with that shit anymore. So there are no sad feelings here.
Okay, good.
But he is.
But what happened? Yeah.
He has always been a very dangerously
Toxic person?
angry, bigoted
Aw, that's
man.
terrible.
Yeah, and you know, it wasn't something I was conscientious of as a child, because when I was a kid, I was making choices and presenting myself in a way that he approved of, you know.
Yeah.
But you know how abusers work. The second you're outside of their control, that's when things really start
It's
to
the van,
shift.
it's the van. Yeah, and it's like, yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder often if like some either well-meaning or shit-meaning family member has ever sent him any of my social media, anything about me that would indicate that I am transgender. But it's honestly like not my problem anymore, because I'm like, oh, what are you gonna do? Disown me? Like,
Oh my God.
I'm gonna cut you off first. So we can definitely laugh about this. Trust me. And then my mother is it sucks, but it's also like, I guess when it's always, for me, it's always looking at the alternative, and the alternative is so much worse. So it's
Right.
water off the duck's back by this point. And then my mother is somebody who I'm not out to, and who I do not have any immediate plans of being out to. She is like a lot of people of her generation, uninformed, it to a point where it can seem almost intentional, you know. Google's right there, all the information is right there, but no, she's definitely not. She's someone I love very much, and someone who I love to see, and someone who has taken very good care of me in many ways. But it's not on my priority list to be out. I have incredible of aunts and uncles and cousins who are well aware of who I am, and have for years, even before, you know, I wasn't talking about have the right verbiage to describe who I am. I've done an incredible job of loving me and protecting me. So,
And I'm assuming that your father
it's a
and her
mixed
are not
bag.
together, right?
No,
Yeah,
no, they divorced. They divorced two years ago, and yeah, it's been a very different sense, you know?
It blew my mind, the fact that you even, like, when you said that you're not out to your mom, like, because we're in this like social media age, so like I feel like everything is just so out in the open now that it blew my mind that it was even possible for her to not know. But like,
I mean, that's the thing too. Maybe she has been told, maybe she has read these things, but you know, it's the ostrich with its head in the sand. It's so easy when you're if it would be very different if I think I was coming to her and I said, I'm a definitive gender, I'm a man, I'm a transgender man. Like, that would be something that I think she could wrap her mind around with a lot more ease. But to throw in what for a lot of people they treat as such a curveball, it's like, oh my God, this whole new thing. And I say this pretty flippantly, because I do feel kind of flippant about it. Like, man, I don't have the energy right now to break this down.
I mean,
it's the energy of
doing it. Can you see yourself? I mean, do you ever want to, and can you see yourself ever coming out to her?
I think it's going to happen whether I like it or not. And it's not going to necessarily happen by choice. I'm sure it's going to be something that happens to me.
Oh no.
You know, but that's it. Like, again, I've been talked about in newspapers that are not wrestling related per se before, where I am discussed as a transgender person. So, you know, it's like, it's gonna happen. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that's on the back burner. And I can guess it's that way for a lot of people who are privileged enough to not be in a point in their lives where they have to like live at home or be around these people. You know, that makes it really different. I live thousands of miles away, so I'm afforded a lot more control.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
Going back to what I was saying about my coworker, that's the first time that I've ever, actually, I think it's the first transgender person that I've ever met, let alone like, you know, to become friends with and
or who you know you met, who you're aware of, like
right.
We're everywhere.
That's very true. Yeah, and I like what it became for me, like aside from just being friends with him, is just like kind of like a gauge, like based on how people reacted to him or like finding out that he was a trans man, like I would be like, it would create an emotional response on my end, and it just make me like upset if somebody didn't get it. So then I was like, you know, like I knew that I supported, but to have like that emotional response like to his situation was like, I don't know, it's been a cool experience.
Wait, turn around. That's just walking in the bed. He's walking in the bed. All of a sudden I see a baby in the background walking. I got scared.
He's like whatever. He's living his finest life right now. But you know, like Chris, that's a wonderful sentiment to hear, because in my experience, and I don't know how many people in my shoes share this experience. I really don't know, but my relationships and my friendships with cisgender men have really been my saving grace through this past year, in which I've really hit the ground with my transition. I find men a lot easier to be friends with and to approach, only because like I'm like, I don't know, the things that are checked off in those unfortunate dude boxes, I often fit. And I'm really lucky that, especially in my circle of the wrestling world, that the dudes in my life have been so enthusiastic about everything. I mean, like I have two male roommates who are just like, whoa, cool shoes, you look so cool today, I love it. You know,
cool.
like, you know, there's like the whole joke about every time if you're a girl and you go into the bathroom at a bar, there's always a drunk girl who's like, oh my gosh, your lipstick looks incredible, your dress fits you perfectly, I'm obsessed with you, I love you, all these things. I get like gassed up by my dudes all the time, so.
That's awesome.
Rightfully so. They're amazing compliments. I mean, if Chris, if you got compliments by another guy, that would make you feel really good. I mean,
For sure. And honestly, like I have my moments of seeing some of your posts and like your style, and I'm like, man, I need to go shopping.
I mean, God, that's just me like scrolling the old timeline too and being like, all right, McGrath, you got to put a fucking shirt on or something. Like, get it together. So. But no, it's especially in the wrestling scene. I have such like cool, remarkable, always like who really, really do try so hard to be great allies, especially in that Primetime Pro community. Like my intern, Tony the intern, God, such a bro, such a frat dude, and all I want to do is pound beer and talk about my feelings with him all the time. That's all we want to do. Like men,
I'm pretty sure I follow him on all of my social.
He's wonderful, and I think I do think that like the modern man is so much more in tune with how to talk about emotions and how to process those things in a way that people were just not before. And that's not to say that there's not a way to go.
No, the only reason why the relationship with me and Chris is so good is because of the fact that he's that way. He'll cry if he needs to cry. He talks to me when it comes to taking care of the baby. Like, he does a better job than I do. And like, it's amazing. There's no, I think it's equal for everything. It should be equal for everything. There's no man role and there's no woman role. Everything should just be equal.
Yeah, one would think.
Yeah,
one would think. Again,
well,
we've solved all the world's problems.
Look at all this glitter.
There are no more problems.
I know,
but
right? I know.
Yeah, no, some of the most emotional introspection that has been demanded of me over the last few years of my life has come from the request of a man. You know, the most transformative conversations I've had have been with men, and so it is a brave, new, beautiful world out there, and I really hope people like me are able to are in similar situations and they can really take advantage of that. Because I'm learning so much about non-toxic masculinity and figuring out what parts of that are a part of me, you know. What I want to adopt, what I want to be perceived.
Yep.
Mama knows best. It's true.
Right.
This episode will be called Bananas and Glitter, just so you know.
Bananas
I saw there's glitter like all over our bedroom floor right now. So I mean, yeah.
That's the gender spectrum. You're either a banana or you're a glitter.
Oh my God.
That's it. You got one of the. You get to be one of the two.
So, Lolo, I just want to say thank you so much. I know that you're taking the walk to speak with us, and I don't want to have hold you up too much.
No,
But
it's beautiful. I'm loving it. So, anything else? If you've got nothing else, that's good. If you've got, if you want to go before we're done, then that's great too. Either way.
I mean, okay, I have one last one. Oh wait, no,
Hit
two
me with
last.
it.
Have you ever suffered from depression?
Oh yeah, well yeah. So that's complicated. On paper, yeah, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression as a much younger person when I was in high school. But
Okay.
coming back again, depression, anxiety, those are kind of like easier is definitely the wrong word, but those are the most easily identify in terms of like we know what they are, right? We can describe them.
Yeah, but like going through it really sucks.
Yeah. And what I discovered later after getting much better support, much better therapists, and sort of is a more accurate read of figuring out why my brain works the way it does is I have borderline personality disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder, which those are both mental illnesses that can look like other things. And so, yeah, when I was in high school and I didn't have the verbiage or the, I'll say, emotional maturity yet to really be able to accurately describe what my experience was. I think it was much preferred. Okay, anxiety, depression. So yeah, no, I go through pretty grueling depressive episodes that look and feel very similar to the kinds that like people with, I don't know, classic depression might experience. Well, anxiety as more of symptoms for me as opposed to the core of my issue.
I mean, I can give you like one of, I mean, I haven't suffered from really bad depression yet or anxiety. I mean, okay, backtrack to my story. I had brain surgery in December and January because I have Parkinson's. And because my Parkinson's disease would have all my chemicals all fucked up in my brain, that would cause severe depression, anxiety. It was never diagnosed, but I knew it was anxiety. And I knew it was depression because I would not be able to get up out of bed for days. I would not be able to take a shower for days. Give me 1 second. I would not be able to take a shower. Oh, give me 1 second. This dog's barking. Hi, sorry.
Hello.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed for days. People would ask me to go hang out with them, and then instead of like just being so willing and so excited about it, I just couldn't find the energy within myself to get up and do it. It was very sad and dark days for me. Yeah.
Well, when it comes to serious biological illness, there are, and I know I'm telling you something that you are already well aware of, but I think many people are not. That comes with so many mental challenges and can be so hard and so traumatic, and yeah, absolutely cause major depressive episodes. But I think that maybe this is something you've seen, but it's definitely something I've seen where, say somebody gets cancer. You think that the cancer is the one problem. That's a thing that is going to cause all the issues for them. But you don't think about what kind of effect treatment and not being able to just go up and go and do the things that you always want to do, and feeling physically sick.
It sucks.
People don't really think about what that can do to your psyche long term. So, to me, I guess I'm like, yeah, of course, it's completely unsurprising that you survived and fought through intense depressive episodes as a result of severe illness, because we're really bad at we're very bad in the United States at supporting sick people. That's kind of the beginning, middle, and end of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that it'll only, like we've been saying this whole episode, that it'll only get better from here on up because people will not keep so quiet about it and just like
it has to. It really has to, because I mean the alternative is it doesn't get better, and I guess that's a possibility too, at the risk of sounding really bleak. But
I mean, I I feel like there's so many people coming out with so many illnesses, physical and mental alike, that there has to be some, I don't know, things have to get better. I mean, I don't know, maybe things won't get better and Trump will get elected again and we're all fucked. But like, I mean, I'm hoping that things will get better. That's all we can be, also just be hopeful, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Right?
I mean, to not at least strive and fight as hard as we can for a much better world would be such a profound waste of the passion and energy, you know, that all of us on this side of the industry have.
Not only that, but like I know as a mother, I want to like try to fight to make the life for my son when I'm not here better, because that would suck if it was just like, if it was the same shitty world, or if it just like going backwards. I don't want that for him. I want him to be like living in a progressive, better world than we are. Yeah. And the the fact that I'm sorry, you can't hear him, but he's screaming like crazy again.
But you know, knowing what you have fought through while parenting and mothering on top of that is you know better than anybody else. It is something that is impossible on paper until you've walked out on the other.
That's true, yeah. Until you experience it, right?
Massive, like a cost for you.
And like you said, though, I wouldn't with men being more like emotional and stuff like that. I really wouldn't have been able to do it by myself if I didn't have Chris in my life. He's so understanding about everything, and he puts himself, not so much that he puts himself in my shoes, but he just really learns from me. He understands every single thing that I've gone through. Like before, when my body wasn't working with me, he just always understood, and he never made me feel like anything was ever my fault, which I've been through in the past, and it's really terrible. Yeah.
Good on you. Good on both of you.
Oh, thanks. And the last question that I had, I don't know if Chris has any more questions, but the last question that I had is related to depression or anxiety or anything. Do you have any cool Netflix or cool shows that you have been watching in this quarantine?
Ooh, I don't have any cool ones that I can necessarily I've like really attached to during quarantine, but my all-time favorite show is on HBO. It is called The Leftovers. And I think it's a show that is really, I've encouraged a lot of people who I care about to go back and watch it, even though it can be a very bleak show, it can be very challenging, but it takes place in a world that is very similar to ours in terms of just absolute uncertainty. Really having no idea what you're going to find out tomorrow when you turn the news on, and having to create and exist and progress through life regardless of not having tomorrow laid out for you in a really nice way. So the very long and short of it is a very it's not religious by any means, but an event not dissimilar to the rapture happened a number of years before the show starts, where 3% of the world's population disappears.
So it's kind of like
yes and no. I mean, it's similar to the world in which we're living in now, where everything is very it feels very wrong and very incorrect and very strange and frightening, and yet the wheels are still kind of turning.
Okay, so then it's called The Leftovers. That makes sense.
It's about, it's about realizing that something absolutely catastrophic could happen at any time, and choosing to love and care about things anyways.
Cool. Give me 1 second. I want Chris to say goodbye. So give me 1 second. Oh my God. Do you want to end? Yeah. Okay, so let's just remember my phone is on, and then I'll go here. And I go on, or just
Okay, we're back again. Close the door.
Say something. Can you hear us now?
I can, yes.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, we just had to escape the room that our dogs are. But yeah, we just want to say thank you so much for doing this, for speaking openly and honestly, which obviously I wouldn't have expected anything else.
No, thank you so much. This was really refreshing.
Come on, you're an awesome person.
Thank you.
We have crybabies and